My wife let a homeless man sleep on our couch just for one night. Then he took over our lives. When I finally told him to leave, he said, "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" I just stared at him. That was 1 month ago. Today, he was transferred to a prison across the country. My wife Rachel invited a homeless man into our apartment for warm clothes and a home-cooked meal in the middle of winter. I was uneasy, but she said it was just for the night, and he could sleep on our couch and find him a shelter the next day. And so, the man looked at us like we were a gift sent from heaven and went to our apartment with us. He said his name was Peter. Rachel gave him a towel and showed him where the shower was, while I heated some leftovers. When he finished up, he started devouring his meal and said, "You two are angels." I was starting to think I wouldn't make it through the night. Rachel looked pleased. As he ate, he told us he'd been a security consultant before things went sideways. He used to install high-end systems for rich people, talked a lot about entry points, blind spots, vulnerabilities. That night, he slept on the couch. I barely slept at all. The next morning, I made coffee. Peter was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table like he belonged there. "Hope you don't mind," he said. "I figured out your coffee machine. Just needed something warm." Rachel joined us and offered to make pancakes. Peter smiled and said, "You're too good to me." After breakfast, I expected him to pack up, but he kept talking, complimented our furniture, and asked about the building's security. I gave Rachel a look that meant, kick him out. But against my wishes, she said, "Peter, the storm's still going strong. Maybe just one more night." I didn't say anything. That afternoon, Peter asked if he could cook dinner, and Rachel was touched. He made spaghetti, we talked over wine, then suddenly he mentioned that he'd added a second lock to the bathroom door. "You can never be too safe," he said, "especially in apartments like this." Rachel smiled, but I had this uneasy feeling in my chest. None of this was normal. By day 3, Peter had taken to standing in the hallway when Rachel left for work, and saying things like, "Be safe out there, Rachel. It's a dangerous world." That evening, I found him in our office digging through our mail. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. "What are you doing?" He looked up and said, "I'm so sorry, Marcus. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for examples of resumes, just trying to get back on my feet." He looked so embarrassed and broken that I let him off the hook. When I told Rachel about it, she thought we could help him put something together. Still, I didn't say anything. Then Peter started dropping little comments to Rachel like, "Marcus seems tense lately. Everything okay between you two?" To me, he'd mentioned how Rachel said she felt safer with him around. I knew she hadn't said that. By the end of the week, Peter was sleeping in our office. He had somehow moved in without asking. He even changed our Wi-Fi password and installed new router settings because our cybersecurity was weak. He claimed he was just trying to protect us, and when I basically told him that was BS, he acted hurt and said I was being paranoid. And the icing on the cake, he thought we were family. One day, he finally left our house but didn't take anything with him, so I knew he was going to come back. Still, I took that opportunity to go through his bag. I found credit card applications with our address listed, found notes about us and our neighbors, even our work schedules. I told Rachel we needed to call the police, but she was scared he was going to hurt us or our families. That's when I realized we were trapped. This man had made us afraid in our own home. A few days later, Peter told us he was inviting some friends over. They turned out to be other homeless people who needed shelter and offered up our place because we had so much space to share. That snapped something in me. While he was in the bathroom, I took pictures of everything and sent them to my brother Harrison, telling him to call the police. When he came out, I tried to keep my face neutral as he stared me down. "Yeah, about your friends," I said, stalling for time. "I'm not sure that's going to work out." Peter's smile tightened. "And why's that? You and Rachel have so much. Don't you believe in sharing?" "It's not about sharing," I said, glancing at my phone. 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes until the police would arrive. "It's about space and boundaries." Peter laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "Boundaries? I thought we were family now, Marcus. Family doesn't have boundaries." I took a deep breath. "Look, Peter, we're happy to help you out for a few days, but this is our home. We need our space back." He got mad. "Your space? After everything I've done for you? The security upgrades? The cooking? Protecting Rachel when you clearly can't?" That last comment hit a nerve. "What's that supposed to mean?" Peter shrugged, turning away to pour more coffee. "Nothing. Just that Rachel seems to appreciate having someone around who actually makes her feel safe. She told me all about your inadequacies." I tried to keep my face neutral as he stared me down. "Yeah, about your friends," I said, stalling for time. "I'm not sure that's going to work out." Peter's smile tightened. "And why's that? You and Rachel have so much. Don't you believe in sharing?" "It's not about sharing," I said, glancing at my phone. 8:15 a.m., 45 minutes until the police would arrive. "It's about space and boundaries." Peter laughed, a harsh sound that made me flinch. "Boundaries? I thought we were family now, Marcus. Family doesn't have boundaries." I took a deep breath. "Look, Peter, we were happy to help you out for a few days, but this is our home. We need our space back." He got mad. "Your space? After everything I've done for you? The security upgrades? The cooking? Protecting Rachel when you clearly can't?" That last comment hit a nerve. "What's that supposed to mean?" Peter shrugged, turning away to pour more coffee. "Nothing. Just that Rachel seems to appreciate having someone around who actually makes her feel safe. She told me all about your inadequacies." I knew he was lying, trying to get under my skin, but it still made my stomach turn. "That's BS and you know it." "Is it?" Peter raised an eyebrow. "Why don't we call her and ask? Or better yet, let's wait till she gets home. We can all have a nice chat about who she feels safer with." I checked my phone again. 8:23 a.m., This was going to be the longest 37 minutes of my life. I need to shower, I said, desperate for a moment alone. Peter nodded. Sure thing. Don't forget to use both locks. Like I said, you can never be too careful. In the bathroom, I texted Harrison. Peter getting aggressive. Rachel's at work. Tell her to go to your place. Please tell officers to hurry if possible. Harrison replied immediately. They're on their way. Hang tight. Rachel knows to come here. That was a relief at least. I took my time in the shower, trying to burn up as many minutes as possible. When I finally got out, Peter was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my laptop. What are you doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Just checking some security settings, he said without looking up. Your passwords are way too simple, by the way. I've changed them to something more secure. My stomach dropped. You changed my passwords? Without asking me? Peter finally looked up, his expression innocent. I'm just trying to help, Marcus. There are people out there who would love to get access to your personal information. I'm protecting you. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to grab my laptop from him. I need to make a call, I said, heading toward the bedroom. Work stuff? Peter asked, his eyes following me. Yeah, work stuff, I lied. You know, Peter said casually, I noticed you've been calling in sick a lot lately. Your boss must be getting concerned. I froze. How did he know that? Had he been listening to my calls? It's fine, I said, continuing to the bedroom. Just a project deadline. Once inside, I closed the door and checked the time again. 8:47 a.m., 13 more minutes. I called Harrison. How's it going? He asked immediately. He's getting weirder by the minute, I whispered. He changed my computer passwords, and he somehow knows I've been calling in sick to work. Jesus, Harrison muttered. Officer Martinez and her partner are on their way. They should be there any minute. Just stay calm and don't provoke him. I hung up and took a few deep breaths. I could handle 13 more minutes. Just 13 more minutes, and this nightmare would be over. When I came out of the bedroom, Peter was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with our largest knife. The casual way he handled it, testing the edge with his thumb, made my skin crawl. Making lunch? I asked, trying to sound normal. Thought I'd prepare something special, Peter said, the knife flashing as he expertly diced an onion. Since we're having company later, my heart skipped a hit. Company? Peter smiled. My friends, remember? I already texted them. They'll be here around noon. Panic rose in my throat. I told you that's not happening. Peter set down the knife and turned to face me. It is happening, Marcus. I've already promised them. You wouldn't want me to break a promise, would you? The way he said it sounded like a threat. I checked my phone again. 8:55 a.m. 5 more minutes. Peter, I'm sorry, but the answer is no, I said firmly. This is our apartment, and we get to decide who stays here. Peter's face hardened. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You've been a guest in our home, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Guests don't change locks or passwords. Guests don't go through our mail or take notes on our schedules. Guests leave when asked to. Peter took a step toward me, still holding the knife. Is that what this is about? You want me to leave? I swallowed hard. Yes, today. For a moment, Peter just stared at me, his expression unreadable. Then he laughed, a sound that sent chills down my spine. Oh, Marcus, he said, shaking his head. That's not how this works. You invited me in, remember? You and Rachel opened your door to me, and now we're family. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Relief flooded through me. The police were here. I'll get it, Peter said quickly, moving toward the door. No, I've got it, I said, stepping in front of him. Peter's eyes narrowed. Expecting someone? Maybe it's Rachel, I suggested, edging toward the door. She might have forgotten her key. Peter didn't move. Rachel never forgets her key, and she wouldn't be back from work this early. Another knock, more insistent this time. I had to answer it before Peter got suspicious. It's probably just a package, I said, reaching for the doorknob. Peter suddenly grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong. You're acting strange, Marcus, ever since your cousin visited yesterday. What's going on? I pulled my arm free. Nothing's going on. I'm just answering the door. Before Peter could stop me, I opened the door to find Officer Martinez and a male officer standing there. They weren't in uniform, but Officer Martinez gave me a subtle nod. Marcus Gray? She asked formally. Yes, I said, relief washing over me. I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Leroy. We'd like to speak with you and Peter Donovan. Peter appeared behind me, his friendly mask back in place. What's this about, officers? Officer Martinez looked past me to Peter. Mr. Donovan, we're here to investigate reports of mail fraud and potential identity theft. Peter's smile didn't waver. There must be some mistake. I'm just a guest here. May we come in? Officer Leroy asked. I stepped aside, letting them enter. Peter remained by the door, his body language suddenly tense. Marcus, he said, his voice low. What did you do? Mr. Donovan, Officer Martinez said firmly. We have evidence that you've been filling out credit card applications using this address without permission. We also have concerns about your refusal to leave when asked. Peter's friendly demeanor vanished instantly. That's ridiculous. Marcus and Rachel invited me to stay. We're family now. Tell them, Marcus. All three of them looked at me. This was my moment to finally end this nightmare. Peter was invited to stay for one night, I said clearly. That was over a week ago. We've asked him to leave and he's refused. He's changed our locks, our passwords, gone through our mail, and taken notes on our schedules. We want him out of our home. Peter's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful piece of shit. After everything I've done for you and Rachel, the security upgrades, the cooking, the protection, Mr. Donovan, Officer Leroy said, stepping between us. I'm going to need you to calm down. Calm down? Peter laughed bitterly. These people invited me into their home, made me feel like family, and now they're throwing me out like garbage. And you want me to calm down? Officer Martinez moved toward Peter's bag in the corner of the room. Is this your property, Mr. Donovan? Peter's eyes darted to the bag. Yes, that's mine. Don't touch it. We have reason to believe there's evidence of mail fraud in this bag. Officer Martinez said, picking it up. We're going to need to take a look. Peter lunged forward. You can't do that. You need a warrant. Officer Leroy blocked his path. Sir, we have probable cause based on photographic evidence already provided to us. The color drained from Peter's face. He turned to me, his eyes burning with hatred. You went through my things? You took pictures? I nodded, finding my courage now that the police were here. Yes, I did. I found the credit card applications with our address. I found your notes about us, our neighbors, our schedules. Officer Martinez was going through the bag, pulling out exactly what I'd described. She held up several credit card applications with our address clearly written on them. Mr. Donovan, she said, these constitute mail fraud, which is a federal offense. Peter's demeanor changed instantly. His shoulders slumped, and his eyes filled with tears. I was just trying to get back on my feet, he said, his voice breaking. Marcus and Rachel said they wanted to help me. I thought we were friends. The sudden shift was jarring. One minute he was threatening, the next he was playing the victim. I'd seen this act before, and I wasn't falling for it again. We did want to help you, I said, for one night, not for you to take over our lives. Officer Leroy pulled out handcuffs. Mr. Donovan, we're placing you under arrest for mail fraud. You have the right to remain silent. As the officer continued reading Peter his rights, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. This nightmare was finally ending. Peter didn't resist as they cuffed him, but as they led him toward the door, he turned to look at me one last time. This isn't over, Marcus, he said quietly. Rachel and I had a special connection. She'll miss me when I'm gone. A chill ran down my spine, but I stood my ground. Goodbye, Peter. After they took him away, I collapsed onto the couch, exhausted but relieved. I called Harrison immediately to let him know it was safe for Rachel to come home. It's over, I told him. They arrested him. Thank God, Harrison said. Rachel's been a wreck. We'll head over now. While waiting for them, I walked through the apartment, really seeing for the first time how much Peter had changed things. The second lock on the bathroom door, the rearranged furniture that gave him clear sight lines to all entries and exits, the notes he'd left around the apartment, little reminders of his presence. I started gathering his remaining belongings, throwing them into a garbage bag. In the office, I found more disturbing evidence of his obsession with us. Hidden behind the futon was a notebook filled with detailed observations about our daily routines, our conversations, even what we ate for meals. There were pages dedicated to Rachel, her work schedule, her favorite foods, the perfume she wore. By the time Rachel and Harrison arrived, I had removed most traces of Peter from our apartment, though I knew it would take much longer to erase the psychological impact of his presence. Rachel burst through the door and threw her arms around me, sobbing with relief. Is he really gone? She asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. He's gone, I assured her. The police arrested him. He can't hurt us anymore. Harrison stood in the doorway, watching us with concern. You guys should stay with me for a few days, he suggested, at least until you can change the locks. Rachel nodded eagerly, but I hesitated. This was our home. Peter had already taken so much from us. Our peace of mind, our sense of security. I didn't want to let him drive us out. We'll stay tonight, I decided, but tomorrow we're coming back. This is our home, and we're not letting him take that from us. As we packed overnight bags, Officer Martinez called to update me. Peter had been booked on charges of mail fraud, but there was more. We ran his information, she said. Turns out Peter Donovan isn't even his real name. His actual name is Jason Mercer, and he's done this before. My stomach tightened. Done what before? Targeted people who helped him, Officer Martinez explained. He finds compassionate people, gains their trust, and slowly takes over their lives. In some cases, he's managed to empty bank accounts or take out loans in his victims' names before moving on. Jesus, I muttered. Has he ever hurt anyone? There was a pause on the line. Not physically, as far as we know. His approach is more psychological. He makes his victims feel dependent on him, creates tension between couples, isolates them from friends and family. That matched our experience exactly. I thanked Officer Martinez for the information and hung up, feeling sick. What did she say? Rachel asked, noticing my expression. I told her everything, about Peter's real identity, his pattern of behavior, the other victims. Rachel sat down heavily on the bed, her face pale. I can't believe I invited him in, she whispered. This is all my fault. I sat beside her, taking her hand. It's not your fault. You were trying to help someone in need. He's the one who took advantage of that. But I should have listened to you, she insisted. You were uncomfortable from the beginning, and I ignored that. I kept letting him stay, even when things got weird. We both made mistakes, I admitted. I should have been more assertive about getting him out sooner, but it's over now. He's gone, and we're safe. Rachel wasn't convinced. What if he comes back? What if he sends his friends here? It was a legitimate concern, even with Peter, or Jason, I reminded myself. In custody, the fear he'd instilled in us remained. We'll change the locks, I promised. All of them. We'll get a security system installed, and we'll be more careful in the future. Harrison drove us to his apartment across town, where we spent a restless night. Despite knowing Peter was in police custody, I kept waking up, convinced I heard footsteps in the hallway, or someone trying the door. The next morning, we met with a locksmith who agreed to come to our apartment immediately. While he worked on changing all the locks, Rachel and I continued the process of reclaiming our space. We rearranged furniture back to how we liked it, changed all our passwords, and threw away anything Peter had touched that we could replace. Officer Martinez called again with more updates. They'd found evidence in Peter's possessions linking him to at least 3 other households he'd infiltrated in similar ways. In one case, he'd stayed with a family for nearly a month, gradually taking control of their finances and isolating them from friends and relatives. The good news is, with multiple victims coming forward, he's likely to face serious charges, she explained. The bad news is, cases like this can be complicated. He'll probably claim he was invited to stay, that any financial arrangements were agreed upon, that sort of thing. So he might get away with it? I asked, disheartened. Not this time, Officer Martinez assured me. The evidence is too strong, especially with the credit card fraud. But I wanted to prepare you. He might try to contact you or Rachel to convince you to drop charges or change your story. That's not happening, I said firmly. Good. And one more thing. We found a list of names and addresses in his possession, people he was planning to target next, including some of your neighbors. We're contacting them to warn them. After hanging up, I relayed this information to Rachel, who was in the process of cleaning out the refrigerator, throwing away all the food Peter had prepared. I still can't believe how easily he manipulated us, she said, scrubbing the shelves as if trying to erase any trace of his presence. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to make us feel guilty for wanting our own space back. That's how people like him operate, I said, remembering what Officer Martinez had told me. They target kind people because they know kindness can be exploited. Rachel paused, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. Does this mean we should stop helping people? Stop trusting? It was a question I'd been asking myself as well. Had this experience fundamentally changed who we were? Would we walk past someone in need now, afraid they might be another Peter? No, I said finally. It means we need to be smarter about how we help. Maybe instead of inviting strangers into our home, we donate to shelters or volunteer with organizations that have proper vetting processes. Rachel nodded slowly. I like that. We can still help people without putting ourselves at risk. Over the next few days, we settled back into our apartment, though it didn't quite feel like home yet. Every creak made us jump. Every knock at the door sent a surge of panic through us. We installed a security camera at our front door and kept the curtains drawn most of the time. A week after Peter's arrest, we were called to the police station to give formal statements. As we walked through the parking lot, I noticed Rachel scanning our surroundings nervously. He's still in custody, I reminded her gently. He can't hurt us. I know, she said, though she didn't sound convinced. It's just, I keep thinking about what he said to me that last morning before I left for work. I stopped walking. What did he say? Rachel looked away, her voice dropping to a whisper. He said if I ever tried to make him leave, he'd make sure I regretted it. That he knew where I worked, where my parents lived, everything about me. Anger surged through me. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was scared, she admitted, and ashamed. I invited him in, Marcus. I kept insisting he could stay just one more night. This whole situation was my fault. I pulled her into a hug, right there in the parking lot. None of this was your fault. Peter, Jason, whatever his name is, he's a predator. He targets good people and exploits their kindness. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Inside the station, we were led to separate rooms to give our statements. I told the detective everything, how it started as a one-night offer of shelter, how Peter gradually took over our lives, how he created tension between Rachel and me, how he refused to leave when asked. And you never gave him permission to fill out credit card applications using your address? The detective confirmed. Absolutely not, I said. We never gave him permission to go through our mail, change our locks, or alter our Wi-Fi settings either. He just did those things and acted like it was normal. After our statements were recorded, we met with the prosecutor assigned to the case. She was a no-nonsense woman named Vivian Quinn, who explained the charges Peter was facing. Mail fraud is the most straightforward charge, she explained. We have physical evidence and your testimony. The unauthorized access to your personal information and refusal to leave when asked constitute additional charges. Will we have to testify in court? Rachel asked nervously. Possibly, Quinn admitted. But most of these cases end in plea deals, especially with multiple victims coming forward. Multiple victims? I asked. Quinn nodded. Since your case became public, 3 other households have come forward with similar stories about Jason Mercer. Same pattern, Dash. He targets people who help him, gradually takes over their homes, and eventually begins using their personal information for financial gain. So we weren't the first, Rachel said quietly. No, and you likely wouldn't have been the last if you hadn't reported him, Quinn assured us. You did the right thing. As we left the station, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that Peter was facing consequences, anger at how he'd manipulated us, and lingering fear that somehow he might find a way back into our lives. What are you thinking? Rachel asked as we drove home. I'm thinking we need a vacation, I said. Get away for a while, clear our heads. Rachel smiled for the first time in days. That sounds perfect. Where should we go? We spent the evening researching destinations, planning a trip for the following month. It felt good to focus on something positive, to make plans for the future instead of dwelling on the nightmare of the past few weeks. That night, as we were getting ready for bed, Rachel's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and froze. What is it? I asked, immediately concerned. Unknown number, she said, her voice shaking. Don't answer it, I advised. If it's important, they'll leave a message. The phone stopped ringing, only to start again a minute later. Same unknown number. Maybe it's the police, Rachel suggested. Or the prosecutor. They would identify themselves, I pointed out. And they have our contact information on file. The phone rang a third time. Against my advice, Rachel answered, putting it on speaker. Hello? She said cautiously. There was silence on the other end, just the sound of breathing. Then a familiar voice spoke. Rachel, it's me. Please don't hang up. It was Peter. My stomach dropped. How did you get this number? Rachel demanded, her voice surprisingly steady. You're not supposed to contact us. I just wanted to apologize, Peter said, his voice soft and contrite. I never meant to scare you. I thought we had something special, the three of us, a family. I grabbed the phone. Stop calling us. If you contact us again, we'll report it to the police. Peter's voice hardened. You know, Marcus, Rachel and I had conversations about you when you weren't around. She told me things you wouldn't want getting out. That's a lie, I said firmly. We're done with your manipulation. I hung up and immediately called Officer Martinez to report the contact. She promised to look into how Peter had managed to make the call and assured us that it would be added to the charges against him. Change your phone numbers, she advised, and consider staying somewhere else for a few days, just to be safe. We took her advice, spending the weekend at a hotel across town while we arranged to have our phone numbers changed. It felt like an overreaction. Peter was in custody after all, but the sound of his voice had brought back all the fear and anxiety of the past few weeks. On Monday, we returned to our apartment to find a package sitting outside our door. No shipping label, no return address, just a small box wrapped in brown paper. Don't touch it, I said immediately, pulling Rachel back from the door. We called the police, who sent an officer to investigate. The package turned out to contain a framed photo of the three of us, Peter, Rachel, and me, taken during that first week he stayed with us. On the back was written, "Family forever." How did he do this from jail? Rachel asked, her voice shaking. Is he out? Did someone deliver it for him? The officer couldn't answer those questions but promised to add this incident to the report. Once again, we found ourselves afraid in our own home, jumping at every sound, checking the locks multiple times before bed. The next day, Quinn called with news. Peter had been granted bail with strict conditions. How is that possible? I demanded. He's been threatening us. The judge set bail before the report about the phone call and package, Quinn explained. He'll be wearing an ankle monitor and staying with his sister across town. He's under strict orders not to contact you or come anywhere near your home or workplaces. And if he violates those conditions? Rachel asked anxiously. His bail will be immediately revoked, Quinn assured us. The ankle monitor will alert authorities if he comes anywhere near your address, and there's a restraining order in place that prohibits any form of contact. After hanging up, Rachel and I sat in stunned silence. The nightmare we thought was over had just begun again. We should stay somewhere else, Rachel suggested, at least until the trial. I nodded, already mentally listing friends we could stay with, but a part of me rebelled against the idea. This was our home. We'd already let Peter disrupt our lives once. Actually, I said slowly, I have a different idea. The next morning, we met with a security consultant, a legitimate one, recommended by Officer Martinez. He walked through our apartment, pointing out vulnerabilities and suggesting improvements. New deadbolts on all doors, he recommended, window sensors, a monitored alarm system, and cameras, inside and out. It was expensive, but worth it for peace of mind. The consultant promised to have everything installed by the end of the day. While the security team worked, Rachel and I went to the courthouse to attend a hearing about the restraining order. I was nervous about potentially seeing Peter again, but also determined to show him we weren't afraid. The courtroom was nearly empty when we arrived. Quinn met us outside, looking grim. Peter won't be here today, she explained. His attorney is appearing on his behalf, but I wanted to update you on something concerning. She led us to a quiet corner. We've discovered that Peter has been active on social media since his release on bail. He's created a new account and has been posting concerning content. What kind of content? I asked, my stomach tightening. Quinn pulled out her phone and showed us. It was a social media profile under the name Family Man, with a profile picture that was clearly Peter. The most recent post showed a photo of our apartment building from a distance. The caption read, "Missing my real home. Soon." How is this not a violation of the restraining order? Rachel demanded, her voice shaking. It's in a gray area, Quinn admitted. He hasn't directly contacted you, and the photo was taken from a public street, beyond the 500-foot limit of the restraining order. But we're documenting everything. Each post builds our case. The hearing itself was brief. The judge made the temporary restraining order permanent, emphasizing that any violation would result in immediate arrest. Peter's attorney didn't contest it, which Quinn said was a strategic move to appear cooperative. Back at our apartment, the security installation was complete. The consultant walked us through the new system, how to arm and disarm the alarm, how to access the camera feeds from our phones, how to use the panic button that would immediately alert the monitoring company and police. Feel better? I asked Rachel as we locked up that night, our new security system armed and active. She nodded, though I could tell she was still uneasy. It helps, but I still keep expecting to see him standing in the hallway when I wake up, or find him going through our mail again. He can't get to us now, I assured her, though a part of me shared her fear. And soon he'll be in prison, where he belongs. The next few days passed without incident. No mysterious packages, no phone calls from unknown numbers. We began to relax slightly, to reclaim our routines and our space. Then, a week after the hearing, I came home from work to find Rachel sitting at the kitchen table, staring at her laptop with a horrified expression. What's wrong? I asked, immediately concerned. She turned the screen toward me. It was Peter's social media account again. The newest post showed a photo of Rachel leaving her workplace that very afternoon. The caption read, "Beautiful as ever. Miss our talks." I felt my stomach drop. This was taken today? Rachel nodded, tears in her eyes. He's watching me, Marcus. He's following me. I immediately called Officer Martinez, forwarding her the link to Peter's post. She promised to send officers to check on Peter immediately and to increase patrols near our apartment and Rachel's workplace. This is getting close to a violation, she said, taking photos of Rachel and posting them online with. Suggestive comments could be considered harassment. We'll talk to the DA about revoking his bail. That night, we double-checked every lock, window, and door before going to bed. I kept my phone and the panic button from our security system on the nightstand beside me. Neither of us slept much, both listening for any unusual sounds in the apartment. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Looking good, Marcus. Blue really is your color. I sat bolt upright, my heart racing. I was wearing a blue t-shirt. I rushed to the window, peering out into the darkness, but couldn't see anyone. Had Peter been watching us? Was he still out there? I woke Rachel and showed her the text. She immediately started crying again. He can see us, Marcus. He's out there right now. I called the police, who promised to send a patrol car to check the area. While waiting, I checked our security camera feeds on my phone. Nothing unusual outside our door or in the hallway, but when I switched to the camera pointing at the parking lot, my stomach turned. There was Peter, standing directly beneath a streetlight, looking up at our window. He wasn't even trying to hide. When he noticed the camera, he smiled and waved. He's in the parking lot. I told the 911 dispatcher, my voice shaking. Right now, he's looking at our apartment. Officers are 2 minutes out, the dispatcher assured me. Stay inside and keep your doors locked. I watched the feed as police cars pulled into the lot, lights flashing. Peter didn't run. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, that same smug smile on his face. The officers approached him with caution, hands on their weapons. There was a brief conversation before they handcuffed him and put him in the back of a patrol car. Relief washed over me. They had him. It was over. Officer Martinez called about an hour later to confirm Peter was in custody for violating his bail conditions and the restraining order. He'll go before a judge in the morning, she explained. With these violations, there's no way he'll get bail again. Rachel and I finally managed to get a few hours of sleep, feeling safer knowing Peter was locked up. The next morning, we went to the courthouse for Peter's bail hearing, determined to see this through. Quinn met us outside, looking grim. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Peter's claiming he was invited. What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Invited where? To our parking lot at 3 a.m.? Quinn nodded. He says Rachel texted him, asking him to come over because you two had been fighting and she was afraid. That's insane, Rachel exclaimed. I would never do that. I don't even have his number. I know, Quinn assured us, but he's produced screenshots of text messages that appear to be from your number. My mind was reeling. They must be fake. He could have used one of those apps that lets you spoof phone numbers. Almost certainly, Quinn agreed, but it complicates things. His attorney is arguing that he believed he had permission to be there, which would mean he wasn't violating the restraining order intentionally. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He cut off his ankle monitor. How does he explain that? He claims it was malfunctioning and chafing his ankle, Quinn said, clearly not buying it herself. Look, I know this sounds ridiculous, but we need to be prepared. His attorney is good at creating reasonable doubt. Inside the courtroom, Peter was already seated with his lawyer. He looked different today, tired, disheveled, almost frail. I realized it was another act, designed to gain sympathy from the judge. When the hearing began, Peter's attorney presented the supposed text messages from Rachel, arguing that his client believed he had permission to be at our apartment building. Furthermore, the attorney continued, my client removed the ankle monitor because it was causing him physical discomfort. He intended to contact his bail officer in the morning to have it replaced. Quinn demolished these arguments methodically, pointing out that even if Peter had received texts from Rachel, which she disputed, the restraining order was clear that he couldn't come within 500 feet of us or our home, regardless of any supposed invitation. And as for the ankle monitor, she added, cutting it off is a clear violation of his bail conditions, regardless of his alleged discomfort. The judge seemed unimpressed with Peter's excuses. Mr. Mercer, he said sternly, you've demonstrated a pattern of disregard for this court's orders. Bail is revoked. You will remain in custody until trial. Peter's face darkened as the bailiff approached to take him back to holding. As he passed our row, he leaned slightly toward us and whispered, this isn't over. Family is forever. A chill ran down my spine, but I refused to show fear. We'd won this round. Peter was going back to jail where he belonged. Over the next few weeks, we tried to return to normal life. The trial was set for 3 months away, and Quinn assured us the case was strong. With Peter in custody, we finally felt safe enough to relax our vigilance slightly. Then one evening, about a month after Peter's bail was revoked, there was a knock at our door. I checked the security camera feed on my phone before answering. It was a woman I didn't recognize, middle-aged, with Peter's same dark eyes. Can I help you? I asked through the door, not opening it. My name is Evelyn Mercer, she said. I'm Jason's sister. I just want to talk. Rachel and I exchanged glances. This was the sister Peter had supposedly been staying with while on bail. I don't think we have anything to discuss, I said firmly. Please, she insisted. I know what my brother did to you. I want to apologize, and I have information you should know. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, keeping the security chain in place. Evelyn looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. What information? I asked cautiously. Jason has done this before, she said quietly. Many times. I've tried to help him, to get him treatment, but he refuses refuses to admit he has a problem. We already know about his previous victims, I told her. Evelyn shook her head. Not all of them. There are others who were too embarrassed to come forward. And, she hesitated. He's still trying to reach you. My stomach tightened. What do you mean? He's in jail. He has friends, Evelyn explained. People who owe him favors. He's been asking them to deliver messages, to watch your apartment, to report back to him about your comings and goings. Rachel gasped behind me. That's why I keep feeling like someone's watching me. I dismissed Rachel's concerns as paranoia, a natural reaction after everything we'd been through. Now I felt guilty for not taking her seriously. Why are you telling us this? I asked Evelyn suspiciously. Why turn against your brother? Because I'm afraid of what he might do, she admitted. This isn't just about moving in with people anymore. He's obsessed with you two, especially Rachel. In his mind, you're his family now, and you've betrayed him. He talks about teaching you a lesson. I closed the door to remove the security chain, then opened it fully to let Evelyn in. She seemed genuinely concerned, and her information matched what we'd experienced. Over coffee, she told us more about Peter's history, how he'd always been manipulative, even as a child, how he'd gradually escalated from taking advantage of friends to targeting strangers, how he'd become fixated on the idea of creating a perfect family with people who initially showed him kindness. Has he ever been violent? Rachel asked. The question we were both afraid to hear answered. Evelyn hesitated. Not physically, at least not that I know of, but the psychological damage he's caused. Some of his victims have needed years of therapy. Before leaving, Evelyn gave us her phone number. If anything happens, if you notice anyone watching your apartment or receive any strange messages, call me. I might be able to figure out which of Jason's friends is involved. After she left, Rachel and I sat in silence for a while, processing this new information. Do you think we can trust her? Rachel finally asked. I don't know, I admitted, but what she said makes sense. It explains why I've felt like we're being watched even with Peter in jail. The next day, I called Quinn to tell her about Evelyn's visit. She promised to look into the possibility that Peter was communicating with people outside jail and asked us to report any suspicious activity immediately. For the next week, we were hypervigilant, noting any unfamiliar faces around our building, any cars that seemed to linger too long in the parking lot. I installed additional security cameras covering all approaches to our apartment and set up motion-activated lights outside. Then, just as we were starting to think maybe Evelyn had been exaggerating, Rachel received a letter at work. No return address, just her name and workplace. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message cut out from magazine letters, like an old-fashioned ransom note. Family protects each other. Do you protect your parents? Rachel called me in a panic. Marcus, he's threatening my parents now. What do we do? I told her to come straight home while I called Officer Martinez. Within an hour, officers were checking on Rachel's parents, who lived about an hour away. They were fine, completely unaware of any threat, but the police arranged for regular patrols past their house just to be safe. Officer Martinez came to our apartment to collect the letter as evidence. This is a clear escalation, she said grimly. We'll check the jail's visitor logs and phone records to see who Peter might be working with. That night, we called Evelyn to tell her about the letter. She sounded genuinely shocked. This is worse than I thought, she said. Jason must be really obsessed if he's bringing family members into it. Do you want me to visit him? Try to talk some sense into him? I wasn't sure if that would help or make things worse, but we were desperate for any solution. If you think it might work, yes. 2 days later, Evelyn called back. Her voice was shaking. I visited Jason yesterday. He's not well, Marcus. He truly believes you and Rachel are his family now. He talks about you like you're all going to be living together again soon. Did he admit to sending the letter? I asked. Not directly, Evelyn said, but he mentioned Rachel's parents. Said they seemed like nice people who raised her right. How would he know that, unless he's had someone watching them? This was getting out of hand. Peter was in jail, yet somehow still terrorizing us. I called Quinn again, updating her on this latest development. We need to search his cell, she agreed, and monitor his communications more closely. If he's orchestrating harassment from inside, we can add witness intimidation charges. A search of Peter's cell revealed a notebook filled with detailed plans, not just for contacting us, but for what he called Reunion Day, the day he would bring his family back together. The plans were disturbing in their specificity, including notes on our routines, our security measures, even contingencies for if we resisted. Quinn called us immediately after the search. This is exactly what we needed, she said, sounding more optimistic than she had in weeks. With this evidence, we can get a court order to monitor all his communications and visitors, and it strengthens our case for the trial. For the first time in months, I felt like we might actually see an end to this nightmare. Peter's obsession was working against him, creating more evidence for the prosecution. The weeks leading up to the trial were tense, but uneventful. With Peter's communications monitored, the harassment stopped. No more letters, no more sense of being watched. We still kept our security measures in place, but gradually began to relax. Then, 3 days before the trial was set to begin, Officer Martinez called with alarming news. We've identified the person who delivered the threatening letter to Rachel's workplace, she said. It's Peter's cellmate's girlfriend. She's been arrested and is cooperating with us. That's good, right? I asked, not understanding her concerned tone. Mostly yes, Officer Martinez said carefully, but she's revealed something disturbing. Apparently Peter has been talking about a backup plan if the trial doesn't go his way. Something about if he can't have his family, no one can. My stomach tightened. Is he threatening to hurt us? She's not sure exactly what he means, Officer Martinez admitted, but we're taking it very seriously. We'd like to place an officer near your apartment until after the trial, just as a precaution. We readily agreed. Having police protection was reassuring, though it also confirmed how dangerous Peter Peter potentially was. The morning of the trial, Rachel and I arrived at the courthouse early. Quinn met us outside, briefing us on what to expect. When we entered the courtroom, Peter was already there with his attorney. He looked up as we walked in, his face lighting up as if seeing old friends. It was disturbing how normal he could appear, how easily he could slip on that mask of friendliness. The trial began with opening statements. Quinn painted a clear picture of Peter as a manipulative predator who targeted kind people, gradually taking over their lives and exploiting their generosity. Peter's attorney portrayed him as a misunderstood homeless man who had formed genuine attachments to us and simply misinterpreted the boundaries of our hospitality. I was called to testify first. As I took the stand and was sworn in, I could feel Peter's eyes on me, that same intense stare he'd given me in our apartment when he was trying to intimidate me. Quinn led me through my testimony methodically, how Rachel and I had offered Peter shelter for one night, how that night turned into days, then weeks, how he gradually took over our space, changed our locks, went through our mail, how we became afraid in our own home. "And did you give Mr. Mercer permission to fill out credit card applications using your address?" Quinn asked. "Absolutely not," I said. "We never gave him permission to go through our mail at all." "And when you asked him to leave, what was his response?" "He refused," I said. "He acted like we were being unreasonable, like he had a right to be there. He said we were family now." When it was the defense attorney's turn for cross-examination, he tried to suggest that we had led Peter on, that we had never clearly told him he needed to leave. "Isn't it true that your wife invited Mr. Mercer to stay just one more night, several times?" he asked. "Yes, initially," I admitted, "but that was before we realized what was happening. Once we understood he was taking advantage of us, we clearly asked him to leave. And yet you didn't call the police immediately," the attorney pointed out. "If you were truly afraid, why wait?" "Because we were afraid of how he might react," I explained. "He knew everything about us, our schedules, our families. He'd made us feel trapped in our own home." Rachel's testimony followed mine. She was nervous but determined, describing how Peter had manipulated her kindness, how he'd tried to create tension between us, how he'd made her feel unsafe in her own home. "He would stand in the hallway when I left for work," she explained, her voice shaking slightly, "just watching me, and he'd whisper things like, 'Be safe out there,' in this way that felt more like a threat than concern." The defense tried the same tactics with Rachel, suggesting she had sent mixed signals by repeatedly inviting Peter to stay. But Rachel stood her ground. "I was trying to be kind," she said firmly, "but kindness isn't the same as giving someone permission to take over your life." Other witnesses followed. Officer Martinez describing the evidence found in Peter's bag and later in his cell, the cellmate's girlfriend explaining how she delivered the threatening letter, even Evelyn testifying about her brother's history of similar behavior. Throughout it all, Peter sat calmly, occasionally whispering to his attorney. He seemed almost amused by the proceedings, as if this was all an entertaining game. Finally, it was Peter's turn to testify. As he took the stand, he transformed before our eyes, his posture becoming more hunched, his expression more vulnerable. It was the same act he'd put on for the bail hearing, designed to gain sympathy. "Marcus and Rachel saved my life," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "I was freezing, starving, when they took me in. They became like family to me." He claimed that all his actions had been misinterpreted. The credit card applications, he was just trying to get back on his feet. The notes about our schedules, he wanted to be helpful, to know when to have meals ready. The locks he'd changed, for our protection. "I never meant to frighten them," he insisted, a tear rolling down his cheek. "I just wanted to belong somewhere again." It was a masterful performance. I could see some jurors softening, considering his side of the story. But then Quinn began her cross-examination. "Mr. Mercer," she said calmly, "how do you explain the threatening letter sent to Rachel's workplace after you were in custody?" Peter looked confused. "What letter? I don't know anything about a letter." Quinn produced the evidence bag containing the cutout message. "This letter, threatening Rachel's parents. Your cellmate's girlfriend has already testified that you asked her to deliver it." "She's lying," Peter said, his demeanor changing slightly. "I would never threaten Rachel's family. They're practically my family too." "And what about this notebook found in your cell?" Quinn continued, showing him the pages detailing his reunion day plans. "Are these not your plans for forcing Marcus and Rachel to take you back?" Peter's mask slipped further. "Those are private thoughts. Everyone has fantasies. Fantasies that include detailed notes on how to disable their security system. Fantasies that mention what to do if they resist." Peter's friendly demeanor vanished completely. "They abandoned me," he suddenly shouted, his face contorted with rage. "They pretended to care about me, made me feel like family, then threw me away like garbage. They deserve whatever happens to them." The courtroom fell silent. Even Peter's attorney looked shocked at the outburst. Quinn simply nodded and said, "No further questions." As Peter was led back to his seat, he glared at Rachel and me with such hatred that I instinctively moved closer to her, putting my arm around her shoulders protectively. The trial concluded with closing arguments. Quinn emphasized the pattern of manipulation, the escalating control, and the continued harassment even after Peter's arrest. The defense tried to salvage their case by suggesting Peter was mentally ill and needed treatment, not punishment. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Peter showed no reaction as the verdicts were read, just stared straight ahead, his face expressionless. At the sentencing sentencing hearing 2 weeks later, the judge was stern. Mr. Mercer, you have demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior that caused your victims significant psychological harm. Even more concerning is your continued harassment and threats while in custody, showing a complete lack of remorse or understanding of boundaries. Peter was sentenced to 5 years in prison, with mandatory psychiatric evaluation and treatment. Additionally, a permanent restraining order was issued, prohibiting him from contacting us or coming near our home or workplaces ever again after his release. As the bailiff led Peter away, he turned to look at us one last time. There was no anger in his expression now, just that same eerie smile he'd given us so many times in our apartment. "See you soon, family," he called out, before the bailiff pulled him through the door. Despite the conviction and sentence, those parting words left us shaken. Would 5 years be enough? Would Peter ever truly give up his obsession with us? In the weeks that followed, we focused on reclaiming our lives. We moved to a new apartment in a secure building with better security. We changed our phone numbers, email addresses, even our social media accounts. We started seeing a therapist who specialized in helping victims of stalking and psychological abuse. Slowly, we began to heal. The constant fear receded, replaced by cautious optimism about the future. We still had moments of panic, a stranger lingering too long in a parking lot, an unexpected knock at the door, but they became less frequent. 3 months after the trial, Officer Martinez called with news that helped us breathe easier. Peter had been transferred to a prison in another state, far from us, and his psychiatric evaluation had resulted in additional security measures due to his continued obsession. "He won't be contacting you again," she assured us, "and when he's eventually released, his parole conditions will include monitoring and restrictions on where he can live." A year after Peter first entered our lives, Rachel and I were finally starting to feel normal again. We still had our security system, still checked the locks multiple times before bed, but we were no longer living in constant fear. We also found healthier ways to channel our desire to help others. Instead of inviting strangers into our home, we volunteered at a local shelter, helping people in need within a structured, safe environment. It allowed us to maintain our compassion without compromising our safety. One evening, as we walked home from the shelter, Rachel squeezed my hand. "I don't regret it, you know," she said quietly. "Regret what?" I asked. "Helping Peter that first night," she explained. "I regret what happened after, how he manipulated us, but not the initial act of kindness. If we let this experience make us stop caring about others, then he wins." I thought about that for a moment. You're right, we just need to be smarter about how we help. Set boundaries, trust our instincts when something feels off. As we reached our building, I glanced back at the street, an old habit from the days when we constantly felt watched. But there was no one there, no shadowy figure lurking nearby, no Peter waiting to reclaim his family. We were safe, we were free, and most importantly, we hadn't let fear destroy our capacity for compassion, just taught us to balance it with caution. The nightmare was finally over.